not live, but recording.
Recording.
We're recording.
All right.
Welcome back.
Chanko, back again for some more abuse, huh?
Yeah, man. Let's talk about. I know we spoke last time about the book.
Yeah.
But it was all up from my top of my head.
Yeah, now you got shit written
down,
so it looks like it's going to make some sense today.
Yeah, but let's start again by introducing the book a little bit so those who don't know. Person over here is the author of
Wakanda is Real. So it's a book about one story that's been told 50,000 times. But in this story, it's the first one that's really told by the people who actually wrote that story. And it's one of the first futuristic stories that was told by the people who actually, or by the descendants of the people who wrote the original story. And the original story is the hero's journey. It's usually a 3-act structure, and then it's a journey towards redemption. And that's what's been going on in all the movies. So that's why I call the book Wakanda is Real, because the Black Panther, as well as Star Wars, as well as all the other futuristic stories, Avatar, it's all real in a sense that the story comes out of reality, comes out of African myth. And African myth is not fables or tales. African myth comes out of experiences that the African people have experienced.
And why did you choose super fiction as a vehicle to tell the story of your ancestors?
Well, I chose super fiction because every one of these movies that involves a superhero with superpowers, and so I figured instead of call it, the title of the book has Afrofuturism, but it also says super fiction. So I was like, yo, this is super shit, this is black shit. It's really high level. The pyramids are super megaliths. The Tekanus are super megaliths, and everything about Africa is like super. Everything about black people is like super. Those are like the original superheroes, the pharaohs, the gods, the deities, and all that stuff. So to me, like T'Challa is just like a Haru, He's like Horus from the ancient Egyptian tales.
And how do you distinguish imagination from suppressed history? Sometimes people can come up with stuff out of the blue, but what do you think this is suppressed and not just fiction?
I think imagination is memory. That's my opinion. I don't think people really imagine stuff organically, because you're a continuum of your ancestors. You know what I mean? Whatever's flowing into you. I'm sure there's a dude that looked just like you, maybe 200 years ago in your genealogy. You know what I'm saying? Probably better looking, but at the end of the day, we're all a continuum. So you really can't suppress or bury history, because somebody's going to come up with it. There was a book back in the day. There was an essay in a book called, there was an essay called "The Negro Digs Up His Past" in a book. I forgot the name of the book, but the essay was called "The Negro Digs Up His Past." And all it takes is like one guy or a couple of guys, a couple of girls to dig that stuff up, and it blows up. So it's very difficult to suppress history. But what they did was use their ancient African imagination to come up with stuff. And this movie is personally a movement for me, because I really wasn't interested in Black Panther. I wasn't interested in other stuff. But it was a movement for me after I wrote the book, because I understood what it was. And I'm sure it's a movement for the people who made it.
Yeah. And so in the beginning of your book, you speak about that, right? Like when it comes to imagination, and you mentioned that, right? Like
I talk about how things come about. One of the first things I talk about is myth. And there's a book called the Pale Fox, where these dudes went down into Dogon land, and they study the Dogon people of Mali. And
Who is that guy you mentioned in the beginning? There's a name you mentioned in the part, like he went down there to study the Dogon. Who is it?
I just think it's Marcel Giroux, something like that. I forgot the name. I forgot his name, how to pronounce his name, but I know his first name is Marcel, and there's another name. Maybe we could flip through the book
In
for
the
a second.
beginning, you
Yeah,
have a
his name is Marcel Giroux, and the other guy named, this is a German name. It's Germain. I don't know, I don't know, man. But the book is called The Pale Fox.
What were they? Who were they?
They were two white boys that had an interest in African culture. When you start digging into African culture, you can just glance at African culture and be intrigued. You don't really have to dig in and learn. You could just go, what is that? And next thing you know, you have a vast interest in where that came from or what it is. And they said that the Dogon founded the star Sirius without telescopes and all that stuff. I don't know how them people did what they did, but they found it very interested. So they was like, yo, let's go check these people out. So that's where the whole stuff about myth comes from. It's not stories, it's not fables, it's not something that's not real. Myths are stories that were designed around actual events that happen, and it's a way to narrate, the past to the future. They always say the past is prologue,
What part of your book do you feel like people need to understand? Like what was the thing they feel most compelled to share with the audience?
The part of the book I think is more compelling is not just the information, the history and stuff like that, but it's the utilization of it. You take the history and you put it to work. It's a tool. So there's a section of the book towards the end, after I give you business about what's going on. Towards the end of the book, it maps out like a plan for how you can use everything that's not just in the book, but that's in yourself and your culture to be successful with stuff. You know what I mean? Like I said, the Black Panther for me is a movement, and it's like a blueprint for what could happen. Like this picture back here that we're looking at, that's something that they're working on in Rwanda. A green city. Well, there's green cities in China. They got plants hanging down, and then there was the hanging plants in Mesopotamia. So before Mesopotamia, I'm sure they had green cities all over Kemet, which what everybody calls Egypt. That whole area, or rather Ethiopia. So a lot of that stuff, as it's being done now, go back in your memory, go back in the book and say, oh, okay, I could take this, and this. And you may not necessarily build your own Wakandan city, but you could build your own Wakanda within you. For real, I'm not just talking. You can really build a Wakanda within you, and a Wakanda is just a positive institution, a positive outlook, a positive world. You know what I mean? And then maybe you can assist in building a real Wakanda like these guys are doing now. Because what's going on in Dubai, what's going on in the Arab Emirates, what's going on in Saudi Arabia, what's going on in Singapore. I mean, it's amazing architecture, amazing construction that's going on. And it's all futuristic, it's all powerful, it's all modern, it's all high tech. And it's all happening in Africa also. And it's up to us as Black people to be like, yo, we're going to do our thing. And, we're going to help build this Wakandan cities. But it starts here. When Marcus Garvey was talking about going back to Africa, he was talking about going back to Africa here first. Because if you're not here mentally with Africa, when you go there, you're going to be confused.
And is that what you refer to when you say Wakanda is real?
Yeah. Wakanda is mad real because, it's a blueprint for what's possible. It's something that you could actually accomplish. You're doing all this other stuff. Just shift your stuff to building, and using your own vibranium. You know what I mean?
Vibranium.
And I talk about vibranium in the book, and it's like a nice, cute little thing. It's like uranium, titanium. Well, vibranium for me.
Because you in the book you say, and no, it's not melanin.
Because
you think we know already.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to say
another question. That's another question. But I said in the book that there's something more powerful in black people.
And you don't have to say it.
I'm not saying it.
Okay, good.
I'm not saying it.
Because I'm intrigued now to find out for myself in the book.
You're not going to find that in the book. It's not in the book.
Oh, it's not in the book.
No, it's a superpower that black people have that goes beyond melanin. Melanin is a neurotransmitter, is a power, it's a source, it's electric, it's chemical, it's liquid, it's solid, it's even gas. Melanin is dope. But there's something that we have in us that's more powerful than melanin. But black people run their mouth on shit too much. So I'm not gonna say what it is because I don't want nobody to go fucking with it. And black people have it, so they don't even need to know what it is. Okay. You got a heart, you don't need to know what that is. You got a spleen, you got a liver, but it's bigger than vibranium.
Okay, don't hype it up too much, okay?
I understand. I get you. But vibranium for me is vibing brains.
Oh, okay.
Like how, remember we was upstairs and we was just knocking out ideas?
Right.
And when we put the book cover together, we was knocking out ideas. That's vibranium. Brains vibing.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
That's deep.
The cranium, the brain, the vibe.
Okay.
Vibranium.
Okay.
Come on, man.
I got you. Who do you think will benefit from reading this book? Who is it big for?
This book is written on a very black tip. It's very black. It's blackety black. But I think anybody, if they put aside their own personal shit and just look at the content and the power of the people involved in this book, even though they're black, you could do the same thing. Everything at one point in this world was black. There was nothing else. There was no Chinese. There was no whites. There was nothing. There was no Dominicans, I'm sorry. But everything was black. And like I said before, every human being can own a part of ancient African history because we all come out of that genetic strain. Some of us are just blacker than other people, and some people get mad at that. And some people want to separate themselves as a different race. But anybody who want to really get themselves together and empower themselves can dig into this book and say, oh wow. There's a guy, he plays for the Raiders. This is an interesting take on that question. I forgot his name. He's a white dude. He's a defensive end. He plays for the Raiders, right? He's got tattoos all over his body, right? And the guy, from face value, looks like, no disrespect, but he looks like a redneck. You know what I mean? He's got the beard and all that stuff. He gives off those redneck vibes, right? But this dude has tattoos all over his body of black people. Yeah, he's got tattoos of Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali. He's got some white people on it, but his whole thing is to tattoo his body with inspirational people. And for him, he's an athlete. He's not going to put, Bill Gates or Oprah Winfrey on his body. He put Muhammad Ali on his body because that's where it is. And just like he used these superheroes, just like he used these supermen, these athletes, these super athletes, you could use this book in the same manner, and get inspired from that because the first original builders were black. The people who found God were black. The people who started civilization were black. The people who started science, medicine, culture, music were black. So why not steal from the best? You know what I mean? Just take it, they doing it anyway. All these white stars and stuff that do rock and roll music, they're taking that from black people, and you could get a lot of similar things from reading this book.
Okay. Now, one thing that you speak about the Dogon in the beginning. Why are the Dogons, like you mentioned, as like the beginning of civilization or religion? Why? Why
Well,
the
the
Dogon?
Dogon, I don't know if the Dogon are the beginning of civilization. I mean, we got that with the Twambuti people in the Congo, and then people are saying that the South African Khoisan people, which people call the Bush people, are the original people of the planet. And then come the Twambuti, and some people say it's kind of like the same thing. I personally believe that the Australians are older than everybody else, but I ain't got no proof of that. I'm just looking at it from a visual perspective and vibing on how the Australians look, because they look different from any other type of black people. It's like we were talking about that the other day. You know, you got a Nigerian, you know, he looks different from a Tanzanian, and an Ethiopian looks different from a Angolan. Like black people don't look alike, you know what I mean? So, but the Australian, he looks completely different from all the other strangers. You could see some similarities between like a East African or a West African or a South African or a North African or even a Central African. You can see some similarities between a Sudanese and a Senegalese, but the Australians got a distinctive look, and I'm thinking that they might be older genetically than other people. So what the fuck was the question?
No, that was the question, like about the Dogon, like why?
Yeah, the Dogon. The Dogon came later. Dogon, those guys. Dogons are more. I think the Dogon people more of the spiritual depth
Okay.
and the spiritual and scientific depth of African people. I mean,
because they study the stars.
They study the stars. They were astronomers. They might have been astronauts. I don't know, but they're locked into the cosmos. I mean, they did that in Ethiopia. They did that in what y'all call ancient Egypt. They did that in the Congo. But these guys, they had a focus, man. They found constellations and all that shit. Them brothers are bugged. You know what I mean? I'm like looking at them. I'm like, yo, y'all are next level.
On the way home today, I was reading the book, and people were staring at the book, looking at it like, who the heck wrote that book? What's that book about? And I kept getting more glance.
Really?
You know, yeah, I was like proud of I'm reading a book that nobody has read before.
Right.
And some people have read it, right?
Some people, it's out now. Some people have read it, yeah.
And so what do you think would be the most controversial part of that book?
You know, the most controversial part of this book is the scholars and what they say. You know, I did a lot of research on this book. A lot of books I had in my personal library, but I did a lot of research on this book. And there were some people that had so much stuff to say about history. One guy said for the first 3,000 years of history, there wasn't a civilized white man on the planet. And this is a white dude. Another guy in a book called Who is This King of Glory? He wrote about how everything that you know about Christianity today and modern Christianity is a bunch of nonsense. He said, whatever you think about Christianity is fake, it's stolen Egyptianism. That's what he called it, Egyptianism. Another thing I found out that was interesting was that, I don't know if this is true, but the numbers tell. There was a lady, she was married to a gentleman named Cheikh Anta Diop. Cheikh Anta Diop wrote a lot of African history based on science and genetics, and this guy had his own carbon dating lab, so he was like Dogonish, you know, but he was Senegalese. He was deep, and his wife was a white lady from France, and she came up with this statistic that she was studying about African people, and she said that from the 1500s, there was 900 million Africans in Africa. She said by the 19th century, there was only 90 million people in Africa. So they wiped out 90% of the people in Africa.
And when you say wipe from Africa, what part of Africa specifically would you?
The continent. She said that the continent was ravaged. Now, this is written, if you want to find out the source, this was written in Dr. Charles Fincher's book called Egypt, A 10,000 Year History. Now, everybody's like, oh, nah, that's crazy, that can't happen. Okay, let's do the math. In the Congo, right, there was a guy, he was a murderous tyrant named Leopold, and he killed like 15 million black people, and that's an estimate. I think that's lowballing, in like a generation, you know what I mean, or in like a 10, 12-year period. He alone killed 15 million, okay, in like 10 years.
Is he from England, Leopold?
No, he's from Belgium. Oh. And so in that period, he had a small period. He didn't even have a lifetime. He had like 10, 15 years, right? What Cheikh Anta Diop's wife was talking about was a 500-600 year period. So if you could kill 10 million people in 10, 15 years, or 15 million people in 10, 15 million years, what could you do? You do the math on that. You do that in 6 years, 10 million people, that's no, you do that in 700 years, right? I mean, the math is crazy on that, So you would say, if he killed, let's say he did it in 20 years, right? In 100 years, you're talking about 75 million people. Now, in 500 years, you're probably talking about another 350, 400 million people. So it's not that crazy to think about that, So, when I saw that was crazy. Another thing was how many people died in India under white domination.
Well,
famine.
England?
India.
But who dominated India?
England. Okay. They're by the British. And the British wiped out a lot of the Indian folks. And through famine, they did that, over a period of like 100 and something years, they wiped out about maybe 100 million Indian people. It's shocking that they got 1 billion of them motherfuckers still running around, but they knocked out a couple 100 million people in a vast period of time. And then you know what happened with the native people here.
Right.
Jesus Christ, there's a book called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. By the first 10 pages, like 10 million people are gone. So.
What was the journey like for you to write this book? Because you like you did a lot of digging.
I did a lot of digging, but a lot of that digging was done. So I've been doing this stuff since I was like 10. I started with the 5%ers. I don't know if you know about the 5%ers. Right? I started, chilling with the 5%ers when I was a kid. And it turns out some of this stuff was a little off, but some of this stuff was tight. And then after the 5%ers, hung out with Nation of Islam dude. And then we started going to different lectures and stuff like that, because they was giving out free food. So you get a lecture, but after the lecture you get some food. So we didn't really go for the lecture. We went for the fried chicken and the mashed potatoes and stuff. And then there was
I get you.
Yeah. And then there was girls there, so we was like, all right, we would just go, just to go. But then that stuff starts to filter, because you're sitting there, you're like, wait, what did he just say? Black people did what? When did he say that?
What year was this that you would go there?
This is like when I was a kid, man. I was like 12, 13 years old, flipping through this stuff, like crazy. But it it was just what we did. We played football, we played basketball, we played baseball, and we went to these, I call them the Kill Whitey meetings.
Oh, that's beautiful.
My ex-girl, that's the name of that book, Notes from My Kill Whitey Meeting.
Right.
Yeah, I was dating this girl. She was an investment banker. And we would have to make appointments to see each other because she was so busy and I was on the road doing stand-up, and we were living in the same house, but we never saw each other. So one time she came home and I was home, but it was Wednesday and I had to go to the United African Movement meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And she came home and she was like ready for, hanging out. So she said, where you going? I said, I'm going over to the UAM. She said, but she go ahead, go on to your little Kill Whitey meetings. And that's when that Kill Whitey meeting shit stuck. So I wrote a book called Notes from My Kill Whitey Meeting that's going to be coming out soon. That book is crazy. Crazier than this, because it's not what I'm saying, it's what these people are saying.
And for this book, it's about research that you've done, and then the Kill Whitey meetings are words from the people in the meeting.
The actual people are talking in that book. In this book, I'm talking, and I'm referencing the other people. Another thing, this didn't surprise me, but this people will find interesting about the book, about how women were treated in Africa. One of the most fascinating things about women were in the forefront of everything. Mm-hmm. Black women were, they were the queens, they were the rulers. There's a lady, they call her the Gabonese granny, Bernadette Ribonnet, I think. I'm so fucked up with names. I think her name is Bernadette Ribonnet. And she said, nothing happens in my country without consulting the women. And there's a lot of black women, even in post and pre-colonial Africa, Ya Asante-Wa, Queen Nzinga, and Queen Amina. Yeah, that's the Nigerian chick I was trying to remember the other day, Queen Amina. And so there are a lot of African women who were doing the thing. Then there were the Ashanti women and all that stuff. And but going back into ancient Africa, how the women were revered, how they were treated, and it was like the manhood was at its highest level. I mean, manhood was at its highest level because the manhood was about the women. Your manhood was enhanced because your woman was in front. It's not like your women were leading you or ruling you, but it was a matriarchal society, and it was also matrilineal. A lot of my Muslim friends like to say, yo, brother, it wasn't a matriarchal society. It was a matrilineal society. Well, what people don't know is that a lot of people think this is a patriarchal society. And they say patriarchy is what's the problem in the world. No. A patriarchal society is not necessarily a bad society. A matriarchal society is not necessarily a bad society. A combination of matriarchy and patriarchy is not necessarily a bad society. Mm-hmm. What we have here is not a patriarchal society. What we have is a barbaric society. Okay? Once you take the woman out of participation in society, you become a barbaric society because the woman is part of your society. The woman creates you. I mean, you can talk about Adam's rib and all that.
Right, coming from.
Yeah, the woman, you come from the woman. Forget that song and dance, you know what I mean? So what we have is a barbaric society. We don't have a patriarchal society. I mean, the Zulus are patriarchal in South Africa. Mm-hmm. They're not bugging out like we are here. And a lot of other societies are matriarchal, but the Muslims like the man leading stuff, They separate the women.
In Egypt, there's a lot of statues. Well, the women will be in front and the men will be behind.
Yeah.
Sort of like the women would be leading, but the men will be supporting in a way.
Yeah, it's. I mean, like Lupita Nyong'o, she was in the Black Panther too. She said, behind every great man, there's a great woman. But usually in front of every great man, there's a great woman. You know what I mean? all this stuff about man and woman, it's really stupid shit. You know what I mean? Because, you know, they're women doctors. I'm not a doctor. My cousin's a doctor, and she's a pediatrician. I can't fuck with what she does. I'm a comedian.
Right.
You know what I mean? So she's out front in her shit. It's not a man or a woman's job. I do my shit. It's not a man or a woman's job. Right. So that was one of the things. And another one before you asked another question was where child brides came from. You know, they always talk about child brides, you know. There's a guy named what's his name? He wrote a book called The Dalit, The Black Untouchables of India. V.T. Rajshekar, right? He wrote a book and he talked about how the whites came into India 900 BC.
The whites from where?
They came out of that same Ukrainian basin that we talked about on the other thing.
Because one thing, sorry to cut you off, but one thing that I keep wanting when you say whites, I want you to be specific. Because the word white may be too broad, so maybe.
Well, you know, for a lot of people don't realize the Asiatic whites, and then there's European whites or Western whites. And those people were, I don't know if they were Asiatic whites, but the Asiatic whites are like you know, the Persians and the Chinese and stuff like that. The Chinese, some Chinese got white skin. And then the Russians are like Asiatic whites. And the Russians don't look at themselves as Western Europeans. That's why they got a problem with the Russians. They got a problem with the Russians because the Russians don't look at themselves as European. They look at themselves as Russian. Right. They don't look at like Puerto Ricans. I'm Puerto Rican. The Russians don't look at themselves as white. We Russian. And they got a Russian empire, you know. And they're like from their culture, their lineage is Byzantine, and Byzantine is African. So they came over.
The Ukrainians.
I'm not saying they're Ukrainians, but they come from that area because there wasn't no Ukraine back then. In 900 BC, wasn't no Ukraine, wasn't no Russia. But those people from that area came out of there, and they went up into India. They first, you know, went up into what's known as Iran or Persia right now, and then they went up in India and they got rid of all the black gods and made all the gods white, and they were the ones that institutionalized, according to V.T. Rajshekar, they're the ones that institutionalized child brides. They're the ones that created the whole system where widows can't remarry in India, and when your husband dies in India, you get thrown out to pasture. You know, he puts you in a hut somewhere or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they do with them. But I mean, unless you're an educated woman, you can fly to, you know, to Detroit and get a job as a doctor. But they were the ones that created the child brides, and they created the system where the man can consummate the relationship with a child as young as 6 and 8 years old. So black people get blamed for child brides in various cultures, but that shit was brought to us. We didn't bring that nowhere else.
And where did he say the idea came from? Like them, but what religion did they practice? What was their
barbarism? They practiced barbarism. You know, there's a quote from one of my favorite professors, Nikki Giovanni. You know, because now we do child brides and we do sexism and we do all this crazy shit. And she had a quote that was brilliant. When I heard her say it, I had to I didn't hear anything else after in the lecture. She says, "I've lived too long with sick people to think I've escaped their maladies." You understand what that means? I've lived too long with sick, crazy motherfuckers to think I've escaped being crazy. So I was talking about North Korea. They bombed the shit out of that country and made them niggas crazy in North Korea. So what they did in India trickled down, because India was a very, very influential civilization. Very influential. They had Mohenjo-Daro, the Harappan civilization. Indians were no joke, and these were black Indians. That's why they call me West Indian. I ain't fucking West Indian. There's no such thing as a West Indian. There's one Indian, and it's those people up there. So that's one of the things that was crazy interesting for me in the book.
And that was one part that you, when you research about the
Yeah, I was like, yeah,
because they're also connected to the Black Panther. You said that he started.
the Dalit. He didn't start it,
Oh,
but they started the Dalit Panthers, which is like Dalit is like a very, see, to me it means nigger. You know what I mean? Like in South Africa they have Kafir. Kafir means nigger. America, you know, that's what it means here. And Dalit is the same thing. They call the black untouchables of India. In a lot of instances, they get treated worse than black people in America because they don't have the opportunity to move up. At least in America, black people could go to school. At least they could go to school since the 1950s and 60s or whatever. They weren't allowed to read and stuff like that. But what they do with the black untouchables of India, or the Dalit, or the Adivasi, means from the land, you know, man, those people get treated like crap. And they're most of India. India is the blackest nation in the world, not Nigeria. India has like 900 million black people. Yeah, I mean, not even per number.
Right.
You know, it's like 200 some million people in Nigeria, 1.5 billion people in India, 900 million according to VT. He's saying that a lot of the tribals are black, a lot of Muslims are black, and they're going to have a Muslim problem coming up soon.
Now, what is one thing, like, how do you think Africans influence the world?
Jesus Christ. I mean, even me saying Jesus Christ is just, okay.
Now, you grew up, what religion did you grow up?
Catholic.
Okay.
Through him, with him, in him, in him. Okay. How did Africa influence the world? That is like a question that has literally thousands of answers. I'll go with one thing, science. The Ashango bone, like 60,000 years old, some crazy shit like that. It's a calculator. You know, it's a Kunta Kinte's computer. You know what I mean? The concept of zero. You're a computer dude. Everything is ones and zeros. Black people introduced the concept of zero, the essence of nothingness.
What culture was that?
Nigga, I don't know. It's just
because I remember there's one culture that they say I think it's they created the ones and zeros, sort of to like the computing power, but they created it way back when they with shells, like they would do
the cowrie shells. Look, I can't pinpoint exactly where the 1 and 0 came from, but it's basic mathematics. The ciphers that we have now, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, those are called ciphers. Those came out of India, right? Okay, you gotta be careful when you say India, because anytime you say India, you have to think black. When you think India, you have to think black when we're talking about the origins of India. Right now, you can think, you know, Bollywood and all that shit, but when you think India, when I'm talking about India, you have to think black. Gotcha. So those ciphers, when I was a kid, they call it Arabic numerals, because the Arabs are the ones that brought it to the Western world. So those were called Arabic numerals, but it's actually called Hindu numerals. And those people that invented those numerals were black. India and Ethiopia are the same thing, or India and Africa are the same thing. You know, India is just a couple of hours later than Africa in reference to civilization, but the advancements came out of Africa. Religion, right? Coming out of the Congo, the people that first discovered God were what we call pygmies, right? Well, I don't call them pygmies. They're the Twa, Mbuti, Moesha people, Batwa people. They're them little dudes. You know, they look like midgets, but they're not midgets. They're little dudes, little women, you know, 4'8", 4'9", and they created religion as we know it. They created the spiritual system that became ancient Egypt. They created the spiritual system that became Christianity, Judaism, and that came out of an African construct known as voodoo. And this shakes people. This is one of the most controversial things in the book, is that voodoo is the structure and the foundation of every religion in the world, from Judaism to Christianity to Islam, and the splinter groups like the Baptists and the Catholics and all that. I don't know about the other religions that came after that, but I'm talking about the big three. And voodoo is the predecessor to all that. Mm-hmm. Voodoo actually means God. So that's how Africa influenced the world. Another way Africa influenced the world is architecture. I mean, we designed and built shit. We took that to India, we took that to China, and we designed and built stuff. I'll get back to voodoo. Another way Africa influenced the world, voodoo is a spiritual system. So there's something in Africa, as well as Korea and China and the Caribbean, called a susu. Mm-hmm. In some countries, called a box hand. In Jamaica, it's called a partner. And in other places, it's called a susu. Well, a susu is part of voodoo. Susu is the banking system and the monetary system of voodoo. Then there's agriculture and farming. That is the agricultural and sustenance part of voodoo. And then there's the religious part of voodoo that everybody's afraid of. Nobody talks about the banking system. Nobody talks about this other stuff. All this other stuff comes with it. Architecture, the Masons that everybody calls Freemasons. Africans weren't Freemasons. Okay, that was the building and construction part. Then there was the medicine part of voodoo. They call him the voodoo doctor. Well, where you gonna go when you're sick? You gonna go to the doctor. 9 times out of 10, he's a voodoo doctor. Nowadays, they call him a shaman. Voodoo just means God. It's just that they've shitted on voodoo for so many years that even black people are afraid of voodoo now.
Why is that a mysterious thing? Like, why has it been made so mysterious?
Because it works. It's what the Haitians used to defeat the French. It's whether you like it or not, you practice voodoo in Christianity, in Islam. Whether you like it or not, it's there. But if you lock it in, you can do some magnificent things with it. If you utilize it as the tool that it is. For example, if you lock in the banking system, if you lock in the spiritual system, if you lock in the architectural and construction and building system, if you lock in the what else was there? The monetary system, which I think I might have said that. If you lock in those conceptual ideas that's in voodoo, you become a Wakanda. Wakanda was voodoo, down to the socks. What do you think the heart-shaped herb was? They got superpowers with voodoo. What do you think going back into the realm of the ancestors was? That's going back into the realm of the ancestors, where you go, talk to the ancestors, or you pray to the ancestors. It's the same thing as praying to Jesus. When you pray to Jesus, what are you praying to? You're praying to a being that was once here that is dead. You're praying to an ancestor. So that's why they turned voodoo, because they wanted to lock in their part of Christianity, their part of Judaism, their part of Islam. But when it comes down to it, the foundation comes right out of that African spiritual construct. So, not you, but if you're scared of voodoo, let's not use voodoo. Let's just call it the African spiritual construct. Let's call it the African spiritual system, the Kemetic spiritual system, or the Congolese spiritual system. And then that's what created everything. And like that Professor James Smalls says, those were the things that were taken from us, and they conceptualized voodoo and screwed it up in so many different ways. And the idea that you can have a superpower, that you could create a Superman, is voodoo down to the socks.
That's deep. What is
That's because you Dominican.
No.
You do that Lucamilla stuff, right? You bang the drums.
They call it Santeria or palo.
Santeria or poke or what?
Palo.
Palo.
Palo mayombe.
I know a nigga named Palo.
Yeah. Means stick.
Oh, okay.
That means
Okay.
like stick or hitting the sticks.
Okay.
What? So as we've seen in Greek history and things like that, what? Because a lot of the things are like taken and renamed and things like that. So can you tell us a little bit about something that we do from Greek history that was originally African?
Everything. I mean, all the gods, Apollo, Venus, all the Greek gods were black. Minerva, Nike. Nike's the goddess of war, and that was Neith. Everything was taken out of Africa, and the Greeks took it. But there's a lot of stuff that Greeks stole stuff and whatever. Some of that is true, but some of that is just they just incorporated stuff that they're like, yo, this is dope shit. We got to use it. This works. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, all of them. Well, I don't know about all of them, but I believe Socrates studied in Africa. Many of the Greek scholars studied in Africa. Thales studied in Africa. So all the Greek philosophers and all that stuff had their foundation in Africa.
And where in Africa specifically would you say?
And that's the thing, where in Africa. Everybody says they studied in Egypt because that's where the pyramids were, right?
And Alexandria.
Alexandria and all that stuff. It could have been Alexandria. These motherfuckers could have went to Ethiopia. What we know as Ethiopia. They could have gone to parts of Libya. You know what I mean? When you say Egypt, you look at a brick that's been separated by the Berlin Conference. Okay? Egypt is not a real place. There was no such thing as Egypt. Okay? Egypt is Latin. And before it was Egypt, it was Greek. So where they studied, everybody wants to
say that again. So before it was Egypt, it was Greek?
Yeah, okay. The name Egypt got its name from a temple called Haka Ptah or Heka Ptah, however you want to look at it, right? So Heka Ptah was a temple in Egypt. A lot of people went there. They went there for religious purposes. They went there for educational purposes. But the Greeks couldn't say Heka Ptah, so they called it Aegyptus or Aegyptus, something like that, right? This comes from my man Kaba Kameni. So the Greeks call it Aegyptos, right? Heka Ptah, Aegyptos, and then the Romans called it Egyptos, and Egyptos became Egyptos, and Egyptos became Egypt. So you can say, yes, somebody studied in Egypt. Egyptians didn't build no pyramids because by the time the pyramids were built, nobody called that place Egypt. Egypt is new. Egypt is maybe like 300-400 years old. And then there's Egyptus and Aegyptus and all the other bullshit I just said. There is no Egypt. The pyramids weren't built in Egypt. It was built in Ethiopia, Kemet, or in the Nile Valley.
What is Kemet?
Kemet means land of the blacks, or the black land. Kemet is Africa. And Kemet, you see, when we talk about Kemet, we have no history that I know of where people using the term Kemet. We have history where people using the term Ethiopia, right? So Herodotus was one of the historians that was talking about Kemet, Egypt, Ethiopia, what have you. So Herodotus was talking about Western Asia. All of Western Asia was Ethiopia. India was Ethiopia. Africa was Ethiopia. So he was He was calling the whole place Ethiopia.
As we saw on the map that we saw yesterday.
Right.
We saw the whole thing. Should I bring that up or?
Nah, that was a goofy ass map. I don't know where that map came from because I don't want nobody coming at me because they're gonna come at me with all this shit I'm saying. I know they're gonna come at me. But the thing about it is, there is no Egypt. God knows where exactly Herodotus and them, not Herodotus, Plato and all them, they said, because you gotta understand, Alexander the Great was like 300 BC. Thales and them people were 500, 600, or whatever. So all those cats are older than Alexander. So when Alexander called that city Alexandria, how could you be studying in a city called Alexandria when the nigga that it's named after it came after you were studying there? You know, it's like saying, oh, the Native Americans studied in Detroit. There was no Detroit. There was no Chicago. Well, there might have been a Chicago because those are like native names. But there wasn't no Texas and Alabama or whatever.
Gotcha. In terms of characters, now that you saw the movie, who would you say was, like, what did the father mean in the story of the Black Panther? Like the father passes away. Who is he, like, in terms of personality?
Well, the father is Osiris, Darth Vader. You know what I mean? He's a Star Wars guy. The father is.
I'm not a Star Wars guy, but.
Well, Vader in German means father. Darth means dark father. So, you know, a lot of that Star Wars stuff is black shit. So, T'Chaka is Asar or Osiris. T'Challa is Heru or Horus. So that's what the meaning of that whole father thing was.
So it's like a repetition of myth and stories that have, because usually the father always dies.
Yeah.
In this story.
Yeah.
Or the father comes in through dreams or through visions or something.
Right. It's not necessarily a father. It's also the leadership. You know, like there was a funny movie. I forgot. I think it was Fist of Fury, where Bruce Lee was avenging his teacher's death. It's the same thing. Bruce Lee is Horus, and the teacher was his father, or the teacher was Osiris. And then there's a scene towards the end of the movie where he grabbed the dude. He said, "Why did you kill my teacher? Why?" He hit him like 85 times, just going, why? And that was the funniest shit to us, you know, because it's the same story. It's the same hero's journey. It's that same 3-act play. So that's what the father meant. The father's Darth Vader. The father's John McCain in Die Hard. The father's you know,
Simba. Oh, not Simba. What's his name?
That's the Lion King.
The Lion King. The father of Simba.
I don't know. Mufasa. Yeah. Everything has to do with lineage. It's so deep. Everything has to do with the Godfather. You know, there was Vito Corleone, and then there was Michael.
I want to bring it to the hood, right? So the hood. So what is that image now? Like a lot of the fatherless homes. What does that look like? If there's no father in the home, who do we look at as, like? Thankfully, I have my father, and he's still alive with us. But what is lost in that translation when we don't have a father figure? And then in that moment, like, why did you kill my father? Or Bruce Lee, like, or the Wakanda moment where he goes and talks to his father in the dream. What is lost?
You see how important the father was, because he had to go back and talk to his dad, and he said, "You were wrong." Love Chad Boseman. And you need that connection for your manhood. You know, everybody say a woman can raise it. Look, a woman can do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of successful brothers I know who were raised by a single woman. But the balance with the father is necessary, you know, because one of the things that we were checked with when we were kids was if we was raising hell in the house and my mother didn't have my dad, she would have to deal with that herself. And she would just look at us and go, wait till your father come home, and that was it. We would be like, oh, we do have a father, and this dude's hands are harder than hers. I remember
and even if he didn't hit you, just her saying that.
Just her saying that made you shit your pants. You know? And my father was no brolic gangster dude, but he was my father. Like, yo, you know? But I remember my cousin telling me this story about her son. She was a principal at the school he went to. She's the principal of the school. She is the grand poobah. The buck stops with her. This is the law. She's the sheriff. She's the judge, juror, and executioner. And her son got into a fight. And he came downstairs to the principal's office, which was his mom, right? So he's sitting in there. So he started getting greasy with his mother. She was like, hold on. And she called his father, the principal of the school. Her son is in it. Talk to your father.
Part of the school.
Yeah, yo, he and his father. Bruh, I know his pops. He is no joke. And he calmed down. So that male element is probably one of the most important things that's missing in family. And for me, the male element is more important in little girls, I think, than in little boys. Men get crazy and wild out, not because of lack of fathers, because of lack of mothers. If your mother is not there in your life,
right, even if it's there but not present,
right? If she's like one of them whacked out mother who's not like really down with you. I remember my man met this dude in Florida. His mother was a heroin addict, a white dude, and this guy was telling me stories about his mother. And when he got into the story about his mother being on heroin, like his buddies became cops, right? And when he was like 19, 20, his buddies would call him up. He's like, yo, man, we just picked up your mom. We don't want to arrest her. Can you come get her? And his boys would have to come and like drive his heroin mother to the crib. I never had that with my mom. My mom was no drug addict and all that stuff. I can't imagine his life, how he grew up, pulling heroin needles out of his mom and getting her to the hospital and stuff. So the mother and the boy is mad tight. That's why that Isis and Horus picture is so important, because she's sitting Horus on her lap.
Right.
Okay? And that's the original throne. Okay? The woman's lap is the original throne.
And you did mention, right, like that the kingship or the kingdom comes
through the mother. So the mother is very important. I got this from my friend Dr. DeGroot. She says the rage in men does not come from the lack of fathers. It comes from the lack of mothers. And a lot of craziness.
Or the mother wound, as they call it.
Huh?
The mother wound. That's like a new term that I've heard. Like mother wound, like the wound that the mother left in this.
I have no idea what the fuck that is. Yeah, okay. I haven't heard that.
Okay.
But the mother sort of controls the boy, and the father or nurtures, the mother nurtures the boy, and the father nurtures the girl. Because if you're a daddy's girl, you will never ever look for love in another dude. You know what I mean? If you have your father, some of the best relationships I've ever had with girls was that they had their dad. My nieces had their dad. And they got really good relationships with their boyfriends because they know men are stupid and crazy. So a lot of girls who didn't grow up with men, they don't understand that men are men. We grew up, my nieces grew up with us, there was like 4 boys in the house. We was fighting every day. So when their boyfriends are wilding out or flipping out or whatever, she knows that that's a temporary situation. But you get a girl who hasn't experienced that, she sees a dude flares up, she's going to be like, oh, yo, this nigga crazy. I got to get the fuck out of here. So the father figure is vitally important, but the mother figure is essential because the father will groom the girl and the mother will nurture the boy. because women are born nurturers. A lot of these girls don't need nurturing. They need fathering. These dudes need nurturing because they're wild animals. You know what I mean? You see, how would invent a game like football and rugby where you beat the shit out of each other? You know what I mean? Women didn't do that. Men did. Right. So the women, I remember I was dating this Trinidadian chick, right? And, I'd be upset driving in the car. I was like, come on, what are you doing? And she'd go like this. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay, boo.
That's it.
And she'd like pet me like a puppy. I was like, yeah, this girl's bugging. But she was trying to wind me down. And then I go over to her crib, and her mother was married to this African-American dude. This dude was always amped up. He had 2 kids with her, and he was raising her other 2 kids. And he was the man of the house. He was the boss. But every time he would wild out, she would go, it's okay, baby. All right, baby. I was like, wow. She's doing the same shit her pops is doing to me. So when you see that stuff, it just attaches,
That's fair, And it's a funny thing that because the fathers are not in the house, right? Like when the fathers are in the house, things get out of control. But what would you say, like, the fear, right, of the out of control men, which in the Black Panther movie, it was Killmonger. Killmonger was the one who was the out of control guy, right, who wanted vengeance because they took his father or something like that, right? Like they killed his father.
Killmonger is for me the most interesting character in the movie because Killmonger's Wakandan. And Killmonger lost his dad. And we don't have any, I wrote about that in the book, we don't have any history on his mom, so we don't know how Killmonger grew up. And obviously Killmonger had a decent relationship with his father, because when he lost his dad, he just flipped. And he could have gone many different ways. And I know a lot of brothers who went, because my boy Derek, this is another Dominican cat I grew up with. His father got shot by the police. He went to the Marines and became like a wild animal.
Interesting.
He was just crazy. I used to fight with him, and we used
to, like sparring or what?
Sparring, just 2 kids fighting when we were like 13, 14, and he would win, I would win, and we'd go back like you and the old man.
Gotcha.
And,
shout out El Viejo.
What's his name?
El Viejo.
El Viejo? Okay. So we would go at each other, and I would win, he would win, I would win, he would win. And then he went to the Marines, and then he came back. He had a 72, and he came back, and he says, yo, what's up, man? We went to get pizza, then we went to the park. I was like, yo, you want to go? He's like, yeah. After he got to the Marines, I couldn't lay a hand on this guy.
Interesting.
I could not touch this guy. And the same thing happened with Killmonger. Killmonger could have went off on drugs. He could have went and sold drugs. He could have became a gangster. He could have became a lot of stuff, but he went into the military. And that was where he was trying to recapture his manhood. A lot of brothers try to recapture their manhood when they don't have a dad. You gotta understand, when you don't have a dad, you're the man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember Dave Chappelle talking about when he was growing up, he could always go to his dad to ask for something. He was never the man making the decision. And he would always go to his dad and ask for stuff and ask for advice. If you don't have that, it's very difficult to go to your mom or man shit. You know what I mean? So when you don't have that, you 5, 6, 7 years old, there's no father around and there's no father figure. Who do you go to? And if there's nobody in the neighborhood that you can respect, who do you go to? And even that, it's not your pops. So then you wind up making decisions on your own. You don't get any guidance. And next thing you know, you either figure it out or you wild out. You know what I mean?
Okay. And
like LL Cool J's father shot his mother.
Wow.
Right? And he was still able to grow up and become LL Cool J. And he's like he had some amazing goals as a child. They were simple, they were basic, they were borderline stupid, but it's what made him who he was. He had one goal when he was a kid. He said, all I want to hear is my song on the radio. He had no concept of what that would mean. He had no idea what that. He said, all I wanted to do was hear my song on the radio. When his song hit the radio, it hit millions of people, and they liked the record. It's not, oh, my song's on the radio, let me go back to eating cereal. No, it's my song on the radio. Now I got to go perform in a club. I got to go and perform what these people heard on the radio because they demand that I do. And that little goal that he set, even though his pops wasn't around, that little goal that he set turned him into LL Cool J.
Wow, wow.
That I always tell that story. I think that's one of the greatest stories in the world.
Now, you see, as Killmonger became the out of control man, right? Like in the movie, why? So, and nowadays, Africa is looked at as a young nation, right? Because a lot of the young Africa is one of the countries that has the most young people in the world.
Africa is a continent. Africa, it's not a country.
The continent, right. So Africa being one of the youngest continent in the world, right? But having the youngest people, the country with the continent with the most young people per capita. Now,
everybody thinks Africa is a big housing project.
Right. Like everybody just stacked on top of each other.
Like 54 countries, man.
Okay.
And the food is different everywhere you go.
Exactly. Different cultures, different people, different everything. Now, in terms of like when people are leading, like why, like in terms of leading, like why do you think, or are they afraid? Like are people afraid of African leading? Why? Like the Killmonger out of control situation, do people think that Africa will become the out of control?
No.
Sorry if I didn't.
No. I know where you're going, man. I know where you're going. The thing about it is, look, the people that run this bullshit, right, know full well that Africa and Africans and black people are huge competition. Huge competition, okay? In this world, we have like your Michael Jordans, your Isaiah Thomas, your Magic Johnson. I'm talking about my players, your Magic Johnsons. You know, you get Kyrie Irving, and you know, you got these brothers, LeBron, high level participants in their game. That's cool for the people that run the country. You know, your Patti LaBelle, your Chris Brown, you know, your Jay-Z. It's cool. They're singer-dancers. But if you got a Jay-Z in finance, if you got a Michael Jordan in technology, if you got all these people who have excelled in the physical aspects of humanity are now going into the technological and human advancement part of the world, that's going to cut you out of what you need, what you got to have. You know, these white boys have made their money and have made their self superior because they've suppressed everybody else. Look at China. China's huge competition. India's going to be huge competition. Everybody with brain power is going to be huge competition for the white power structure. They do not want that. You know, they do not want that. And the regular white people could give a shit. You know, because you can usually see white people when they're in Africa or the Caribbean. They're having a great time. But the white people that run this don't want these other whites. Say, hey, that's not for you. Don't be doing that. You got to do this here. Yeah, you're not supposed to be.
I mean, Kanye went through a whole bunch of backlash when he started to get into fashion.
Right.
When well, to me, African Native Americans have a sense of fashion, you know, of the hooks, like, you know, but they're like, you're supposed to stick to music.
Yeah, that's your game. And same thing when what they did to Puffy. He was getting in the liquor business, but you know, that's a good thing. So you go to Puffy, right, or Diddy, right? So Diddy had his own liquor, Ciroc. Well, there's a place that I know in Brooklyn right here called the Happy Cork. It's on Buffalo Avenue and Eastern Parkway, right? The Happy Cork is a store that has nothing but African American liquor. Just black booze made by black people, right? So They don't want that. They don't want the Johnny Walker was a black company. The people that the answer the descendants of Johnny Walker is trying to take that liquor company back. Mm-hmm. That's what they don't want. They don't want a black car. Mm-hmm. They're having problems now with the Japanese, the Toyotas. They don't want a black car. They don't want a black plane. They don't want a black, subway system. They don't want anything that's black participating because it's going to cut out their share of the shit. Mm-hmm. But it's unstoppable because we taught you that shit. Mm-hmm. We were the one that gave you the science and technology. You talk about you went to the moon, which was bullshit. But we were the one that gave you the science and technology and the know-how to tell you that there was a fucking moon. Mm. When you was in fucking Europe, we were crawling around in them fucking barns and shit. You didn't know what the fuck that was. We came and told you what that was. And that's where a lot of white people are, not, most white people could give a shit. Like, I could give a fuck that there's a moon. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And most white people could give a shit there's a moon. I'm not trying to go there, but at the end of the day, regular people are on some regular shit. Mm-hmm. It's the power structure that got a problem.
They feel like they'll be
pushed out.
Right? Okay.
No, I mean, you got to share the world. Mm. You got to share. If you don't think you're going to share the world, then you're not going to be in the world.
Now, what role would you say spirituality has in that? Where, like, education, spirituality, things are in place, and for African spirituality is huge, right? Like for Black people all around the world. Now, in Europe, what role does their spirituality play, and would Black people, how do I say this? If Black people take in, like, and play in that world, like, what sense would it make spirituality in that sense?
Okay, for me, spirituality is the original school. Spirituality, there's a guy named Wynton Marsalis, right? And he went to Berkeley. My buddy was in school in Berkeley, and he went to Berkeley to, like, do a seminar on the musicians over there. And he said, there's a lot of freedom in jazz because jazz has structure. There's no freedom without structure. Okay. If there's no structure, there's chaos, and then there's no freedom. So within jazz, in and of itself, there's structure and there's rules in jazz. And that's what spirituality is about. There's structure and there are rules in spirituality that guides humanity down that road of going away from the devil, going away from, or the devil within you, going away from the demons that get the devil out of you. So religion and spirituality is like a college to guide you into the best direction for the human race. If Black people adopted that more, Black people are like the most religious people in the world. I don't know about spiritual because they've lost a lot of stuff with the church, but the spiritual dynamic that governs Black people, whether it be Judaism or Islam or Christianity, is going to be something that's going to help propel them if they use it correctly and constructively.
So is there one thing that's lost when people deny themselves of their Africanness or their Blackness?
I mean, you could call it Blackness or your Africanness, but when you deny yourself of your essence, you deny yourself of your aesthetic dignity. When you deny yourself of your spiritual dignity, you deny yourself of your physical dignity, you deny yourself of your cultural dignity, you're going to wind up lost. You know what I mean? There's so many things that you can utilize in your culture that you deny because this other group of people told you that sucks. Don't do that, and you got to follow this and you got to follow that. But like the whole thing with Black hair, I don't want to get in trouble with Black women, but that weave thing and them wigs thing, I can't deal with that too much because, I come from a place where nappy hair was good. I don't have, nappy hair, but when I was a kid, my brother had this big afro and I wanted an afro. So when I say I grew up with nothing but black people, right? So when we would go to the ocean or the beach and swim and stuff, or we go to the pool, my hair would be pasted all over my head. But these brothers would just pick their shit up and they'd be back in action again. I was like, yo, I wanted a fro. And when I see black women, like when I was growing up, black women, the worst they would do was they had like a jerry curl or they would press their hair. And that was it. But now it's this weave with the glue and all these women start looking alike and it's like the hair is the same and it's like, and a lot of this hair is dead people's hair. Like they get the hair from India, Korea, and China. Sometimes they shave little girls' heads and they sell this hair, and this hair is big. That's one of the things that you deny your cultural aesthetic. And black women gonna get pissed off at me behind this shit, but when Okoye took her wig off in the Black Panther and showed her bald head, that's what that's all about. There's a song by the Trade Winds. It's a Caribbean group from way back in the day called Copycats, right? And the song was about Caribbean people going to London and New York and Amsterdam and becoming European. But then a guy from Europe would come to the Caribbean, he would never lose his accent. He would never lose his Europeanness. He would stay as European as he could. But brothers would come here and they'd become Yankee and they'd become this and they'd become that. And at the end of the song, he said, don't give me no damn muffin. I grew up on cassava and green plantain. So, and then he says, when you make a call, I go walk into heaven, put down my roti, and say, what happened there? What he's saying is, I'm not going to eat your English muffin. Don't give me no damn muffin. I grew up on cassava and green plantains, like you. And then he says, when the maker calls, I'm going to walk into heaven, put down my roti. Now, for like a Mexican dude, that would be I would walk into heaven and put down my burrito. I'm not putting down a muffin. I'm not putting down this, that. And that was a song about keeping your culture. Bob Marley had a song, he's talking about grow your dreadlocks. Don't be afraid of the wolf pack. You know what I mean? Be happy that your hair is one of but I forgot, man. I forgot. There's a comedian I used to work with when I was a kid named Phyllis Yvonne Stickney. Brilliant comedian, just and beautiful as hell. Phyllis used to say, if your hair is on the floor, that's bad hair. If it's on your head, that's good hair. And it's like clear. So when you deny that culture, it's like people be bugging when I say I'm black, but I'm black. And they be like, but, why would you want to be black? And white people say this shit. Not black people are like
they understand what you mean.
They're like, yo, get over there, Elder Barge.
Why would you want to be black?
So, I remember when I was a kid, white people used to say that to me. Why would you call yourself black? Why would you want to be black? And I didn't understand that question. I was like, the fuck's wrong with you? What are you saying to me? It's like, why do I want to be what I am? The fuck? But they had that was their shit. They had their whiteness, and their whiteness was their shit. And we gotta go back to our blackness being our shit. If you're black and you want to be something else, you're fucking mentally ill, bro. It's a mental illness. It's some fucking full-blown wackaloo shit. You need medication. You need that fucking herb. You need the heart-shaped herb.
Heart-shaped herb to bring you back into
bring your ass back to Wakanda. That's why this movie is so beautiful. That's why this movie is so beautiful.
Point, when that happens in the movies, when he's losing his essence or he's sick, right? So his mom prepares this heart-shaped herb and does a ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Now, rituals is something that we've lost. What do you think is the importance of rituals now that we're in that time?
Rituals are the functions of your spirituality. You have your spiritual construct and your spiritual systems, right? And the rituals are the functions, like when you pour in libation. Again, we go back to my man, Professor James Smalls. He taught me how to pour libation. He taught you what you say when you pour libation. That's, that's when the brothers in California used to say a tip of 40 to the homies. They were pouring libation. Tipping,
and you see, yeah, that's something funny because we would watch it. We will see that in movies, and we will see the old people do it.
Yeah.
When they open the rum, we used to have in Cochapicas. He opened the rum, poured some on the floor, and then he would drink. But they never just drank straight. It was first paying respect, and we thought that was like some.
Why you wasting the booze?
There's some bum stuff like,
yeah, no.
Oh, they just drink, but the wisdom is still there, right?
That's the thing about African spirituality. That's why I say you can never really suppress that stuff. It's gonna come up. It's gonna come up. I remember I have a homegirl that makes my jewelry, right? And Taj, she's a brilliant artist. So she makes all my beads and stuff like that. And one time she was selling stuff on Franklin Avenue, and it was like a street fair. And Aaliyah's Rock the Boat came up. And it was like, rock the boat, work the middle. And as soon as the song came on, Taj it was like reflexive. It was like she couldn't help it. She just started, and she started dancing, and she wasn't really like grooving, but she had to fucking move.
Right.
That's that. Yeah, that's that culture. That's that shit, as she said in Uchiwali. That's that shit.
You said when you called it the other day the funk.
The funk, baby. The funk is before the force. The funk is before voodoo, baby. Make my funk the P-funk.
Now, when people come back what do you see the future to look like when people come back to their traditions? How do you see the future come about? What do you see the future turning into?
Wakanda. There's going to be Chinese Wakanda. There's going to be Indian Wakanda. There's going to be Dominican Wakanda. There's going to be African Wakanda, which is the original Wakanda. When people start getting into their own mojo and they start doing their own shit, there's going to be a respectability. Like the Cantonese respect, the, what was that? There's a bunch of different cultures in China, right? The Cantonese respect the Mandarins, and the Zulu is going to respect the Sonenke, and everybody's gonna have their own culture, because if your culture is respectable and your culture is thriving, nobody can say, yo, this dude is bugging, he's whack, that culture sucks. I mean, you're probably not gonna like their rice and peas, but at the end of the day, who cares? But when you bring your culture back, when you go back to your culture, like Bob Marley said, keep your culture, grow your dreadlocks. When you go back to that, you become who you're supposed to be. My cousin, who's the doctor, right? I never ever saw her with pressed hair. Yvonne has always been this bald black chick. You know what I mean? And I always looked at her. I always admired that she never pressed her hair, and all the other kids pressed their hair, and so I just loved that. She was Dora Milaje, from jump. So it's not just your hair, because don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to grind black women on their hair. It's not just your hair, it's your clothing. It's like one time we did an experiment, right? I did a couple experiments back in the day with women and how they're perceived. So I took my homegirl out and put her in some pum pum shorts, and we walked through Prospect Park, and it was like they was bugging on her. They were like, yo, because she was that chick. She was built. but it was like a nasty, lecherous type thing. So then next time we went out, I threw in a regular dress, just a summer dress, and it was different, right? Then we went out again. I threw in some sweatsuits, just regular sweats, baggy as hell, baseball cap, not much attention. And then we went out again, and I put her in an African traditional outfit, like some Ghanaian shit, right? And they were like, mine, but they were no disrespect. They was just like, "Ooh, that looks good." Then I took her and I put her in some Indian shit. I threw her in a straight sari, but it was pants. It was like a pants type sari and a top, and then the whatever the fuck that shit they put on their head. And she walked through, and people were mesmerized that this black woman was wearing Indian shit. So when you bring the funk, you always gonna win. You always gonna win. One of the things that made black music so good back in the day, where I always talk about the funk, one that made like John Coltrane and Miles Davis and Duke Ellington and Sarah Vaughan and Parliament Funkadelic and all these. Michael Jackson. One of the only thing that made that music great is that it was quintessentially black. Nobody had fucked with it yet. It was black. It was unapologetically black. This bullshit, I don't know what the fuck they're doing, but it ain't black. You know what I mean? It just ain't black. And just look at the music, just look at the culture from years ago. Go study African American culture just in the 60s and 70s and 80s. You ain't got to study Africa. Just study African American culture 60s and 70s when it was black, quintessential black. And then look at the shit now.
Very interesting. Very interesting, because it's like things get lost in traditions, and then you start following new things that you don't understand what they are.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get in, you chase their ghost because there was nothing there. It's essentially you your own while getting nothing.
Yeah, you're going and chasing that, and there's nothing there for you. It's like you're going after dog food money. What you doing? There's a steak and potatoes right there. You're going after kibbles and bits. And that's what kills relationships in the black community. Because we're not who we're supposed to be. We're not, when you look at a black woman today, you're not looking at a black woman. You're looking at a woman who searched out some other bullshit. And she's on that bullshit. And then you look at a black man who searched out some bullshit, and he's on that bullshit. You know what I mean? He's on that nonsense. And it's like, yo, what are you doing? It's like my man Nova, he said, I can't stand these black women and their thought process. I was like, what's wrong with the thought process? He's like, they're into Disney and nigga shit. And I was like, what? He said, they're into Disney and nigga shit. I'm like, explain that. And then he went down a rabbit hole. But all I'm saying is, like, I remember when I was a kid, I was dancing with this girl, Erica, right? And I was like 14, and Erica, actually it's Erika, because Guyanese don't know how to pronounce people's names, so they call the kid Erika. So Erica was a friend of mine when I was in Guyana, and she came up to America, and we were dancing. I think we was about 12, 13 years old, and we were dancing, and all she had on was lotion and sweat. And we were like close dancing because the slow jams came on. And she smelled so fucking good, like lickable smell, right? And it's like, damn. And I don't see a lot of sisters with that smell no more. Because you're smelling all this other shit, White Diamonds by Elizabeth Taylor and this. I want cocoa butter and sweat. I don't need all that other. I don't want to smell the fucking hair weave glue in your hair. I don't want to smell somebody else's hair. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, let's go ahead.
What are some stories you would recommend people to learn, or some cultures that you would recommend people to learn in order to get back into their roots?
You mean black people?
Yeah.
South African culture, Zulu culture is really, really good. South African culture in general is really good. They're some of the nicest people I've ever met.
Is there any like Native American cultures or books that you would say, because there's the out of Africa theory some people claim is not true. Now that people were here, are there any like native like Chickasaw or like Chickasaw, Blackfoot?
Those are all black people.
Yeah. So is there any information or
Seminole.
you recommend?
I'm not familiar with a lot of books on native black people in this hemisphere. The only book I could recommend is Michael Hemotep's book called The First Americans Were Africans. I think he's got 2 editions of that. But my study has always been in Africa. Like, I don't know shit about the Caribbean, but and I'm fucking Caribbean. But there are tons of books. I mean, there's some books that kind of gloss over stuff, but it doesn't tell you about real black indigenous people who are from here. There's a book called The Black Indians by a guy named William Loren Katz. But if you really want to study, go study the people in the deep South, like South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida. You could go and study the Massanutten Pequot tribal nation in Connecticut. You could study the Blackfoot, the Choctaw,
The Shinnecock.
And yeah, all them people, you could go study. There's a woman named Queen Khalifa, named after California. Khalifa means caliph, they say, but that's how California got its name.
Sounds Arabic too, like that whole caliphate.
Yeah, caliphate. But Arabic comes out of African tongues. All the languages come out of Africa. Like Sanskrit is an Ethiopian language. Greek might even be an African language that has its derivative. The term nigger it comes from Niger. There was a guy in the Bible named Simon the Niger, Simon the Black. In Niger just means black. Now they add another G and we're all fucked up about it. Anytime white people cuss us out, anytime white people speak, or anytime any other people speak, their entire linguistic foundation comes from us. When a Pakistani speaks, when a Chinese person speaks, when a fucking European person speaks, their entire linguistic foundation comes out of us. Their ability to even speak and utter a word comes from our genetics that we gave to them, and then their language comes from us. That's why so many Spanish words are Arabic. Arabic was a language that was created by a black dude. I don't know where he got it from, but I've been to Nigeria several times. They speak like 50,000 languages. They speak one language in the bathroom, one language in the kitchen, another language in the yard. So then they speak English, and then they speak their tribal language. Then it's like, what the fuck? But they got so many different languages in Africa that anytime somebody opens their mouth to say something, they should shut the fuck up, because if you're trying to insult me, don't use my shit to insult me.
To me, like, it just became a business language. Like, let's all do business, and we have to have one language.
Well, yeah. Well, that was a commercial language. It became English, and now it's going back to probably Mandarin or Chinese, and then it's going to be Swahili or something like that.
Chinese.
Huh?
We studied Chinese.
Yeah, you should. You should teach Sahara Chinese. Yeah.
All right, let's do two more questions and then we can call it a night. What do you think?
Yeah, because we've been going and your wife is upstairs. She's going to be like, what are they
She's good.
doing?
She's good.
Okay.
What is so we spoke a little bit about voodoo earlier, and there's this whole fear and stuff based around voodoo. But breaking it down, um, and you probably already said this, but let's just retouch it. I want to end on something like for people to look into, to look back into what's the essence of voodoo, you know?
I can't answer the essence of voodoo because it's broad, but voodoo is life guidance. Let's get away from the African spirituality. Let's get away from the voodoo with the dolls and the pins. It's life guidance. It's a structure within a culture. And that culture was once small and then it broadened out. So voodoo is like the guide for your existence. It's part of what you do. It's the formalities that's under your spiritual umbrella. So they call it the African spiritual systems, and there's quite a few of those. There's Kemetic, and then there's Dogon, and then there's, you know, the Ethiopian Coptic Christians and all that shit, but it's all voodoo and it's the umbrella. It's under an umbrella of the African spiritual systems. So it's like voodoo is the African spiritual system is a corporation, and voodoo is the tenets of the corporations, what the corporations should do, and the people that study the voodoo are the employees of that corporation, and the high priest is the CEO. So you don't want to look at voodoo as something that's evil. You want to look at voodoo as something that's practical, that's useful, that's helpful, that's available to you. Like, I don't practice voodoo. I don't know how to practice voodoo, but I know some of the things that I do is voodoo. Because,
Like what?
Like when I meditate. When I meditate, when I cook a certain food, when I'm cooking foods with herbs, when you're throwing herbs in your food and stuff like that, you're doing voodoo. When I'm creating, when I'm writing.
And they call it chemistry.
Yeah, right. They call it, what do they call it? Culinary arts. And now it's a fucking art. But like when I'm playing drums, when I'm writing comedy, when I'm performing, I'm utilizing the tenets of voodoo, but I don't even know that. I had to learn that because you can't. It's like breathing. You can't say that I don't breathe. It's that built in because it's okay. When you have a baby, right? The butt goes on your arm, right? And you hold your baby. Or you hold your baby like this, or you carry your baby in the back. Those are things that are built into your existence. And so when you pray to God, you don't see a God right there. You're praying to a being. That's voodoo. You're praying to something that's not there. You're praying to somebody in the sky. That's an ancestral being. You're praying to an extraterrestrial, if you want to say. So when you sit down and pray, when you imagine, when you write a song, you're channeling all these things that are ancient. They're channeling your mother, your grandmother, your ancestors, and it's all voodoo, and everybody's freaked out about the shit. It's like I don't know. It's like anything that's like mint mouthwash. What the fuck is that? What is that? Okay, you don't use regular mouthwash that doesn't taste like nothing. You gotta have mint mouthwash. So they gotta put sugar in your mouthwash. You're supposed to be making your teeth healthy and your breath fresh, but you got mint mouthwash that tastes good, and the only reason it tastes good because it got sugar in it. Right? That's the bullshit that you do. But the real mouthwash that's going to actually kill the gingivitis in your mouth, that's the voodoo. So they took the real mouthwash, threw some sugar in it, and now you on that fucking real that bullshit mouthwash. You know what I'm saying?
Now, to end, because I know you're a performer, you create things. And in the past, we had a bit of a conversation about like what is really happening when people are performing, and I want you to end on that note because I think it's very interesting.
Well, a lot of people don't know that when anybody performs on a stage or in front of people, it's
Even in a book, you write it.
It's a voodoo ceremony. And one of the ways you could check out that it's a voodoo ceremony is to watch Kool and the Gang's Jungle Boogie. There's a song called Jungle Boogie by Kool and the Gang, and you could see the voodoo right there. There's a guy named Donald Boyce who does the vocals. And he's not singing, he's not rapping, he is doing what people would call speaking in tongue. Get down with the boogie, shake it around, and and he's doing all this crazy shit. And when I first heard that song, I was like, African Americans are fucking crazy, because I never heard a song like that before, right? The person singing on the stage is the voodoo priest. Michael Jackson, Prince, Patti LaBelle, that's the voodoo priest. The band are the initiates. They're the initiates of the voodoo ceremony. And the people in the audience are the village. Don't nobody perform without an audience. You ever thought of that? It's the same thing. A dude in the front, holding the mic, 1, 2, ha, a 1, 2, ha, you know. And then there's a band or a DJ. And then there's people in the audience doing their thing. That is how ceremonies are. When you're in church, the pastor's on stage, he's doing his thing. Then you got the choir, the initiates, right? The deacon and the freakins and all that. And then you got the congregation. That was what he is now. Now, all the Christians are going to look at me, that nigga is crazy. He's demonic. He's the devil. But you don't know what the fuck you came from. You doing all this shit. Oh, you so blessed. You so blessed. You don't know what the fuck you're doing, my man. Because the Christianity that you are involved in, it's cool. I'm not trying to disrespect it. It's cool. It's what you do. That's what you know. That's what you learn. But if you don't know where it came from, you can't tell me what the fuck it is. And it's voodoo. You get in the spirit, especially, people like T.D. Jakes. Oh, I get the spirit, and I just love the blood of Jesus, and I just roll in the blood. Nigga, what are you rolling in blood? If that ain't voodoo, I don't know what the fuck is. You know? One time I saw him on stage, they asked him a question. Back in the day, there was this whole big scandal with this dude named Eddie Long. And I knew Eddie Long because I lived in Atlanta for a little while. And I knew Eddie Long. I went to his church. And Eddie Long was like caught up in this, child banging thing. Yeah, he was popping teenagers and shit and dudes. So they asked T.D. Jakes what he thinks about Eddie Long and stuff. He said, well, everybody got this, and when I feel it, I just lay in the blood. I just let the blood of Jesus wash all over me, and I just wriggle in that blood. And I'm like, where's your chicken, man? You need a chicken right now. You really need a chicken and some conga drums. You need some people with some white dresses on to get your voodoo on. But they won't tell you that. Yeah, they will talk in tongue, and they will get the spirit, they will dance. If you ever watch a gospel choir, and you ever watch the lead singer, ever watch the band, it's the most amazing musical, theatrical performance you'll ever see. Get online and Google this song, Stretch Out. Stretch Out is an amazing gospel song. You watch them people sing Stretch Out, it is amazing because they're not singing to the audience. They're singing with in themselves to the gods or the spirits, and that's voodoo. When you watch a gospel performance, these people are some of the best. You could talk about all the singers out there, all your favorite singers. Then people in them churches will blow those motherfuckers off the fucking stage.
You know what I've heard? That
there's a group called the Clark Sisters. They're out of Chicago. I think one of the name is Dorinda Clark. That's where what's her name? Fantasia comes out of. She comes out of that Chicago thing. Yo, and I think the Clark Sisters from Detroit. But wherever they from, yo, that area, them Detroit, Chicago gospel people and them Jersey gospel people, they're no joke. You will be entertained, and it's free.
Right.
Better than Beyonce. Better than
people coming from Europe, Germany, and things to come to
just to go to black church. Yeah.
I'm like, that's a thing, you know.
And you know,
because it's something that they can't do.
You're not able, or maybe you're not even allowed to execute in that manner unless you're voodoo. You know, Jimi Hendrix had a song called Voodoo Child. You know, one of the best voodoo women you can check out if you want to check out. I hope she don't get upset about this. Is Erykah Badu. Baduism. Baduism is just like code for voodoo. So that's why those folks are able to do stuff, and you have that voodooism within you, whether you're white, you're black, or whatever. But the African essence, it's almost like it's built in the genetics by now. And when those white folks are doing their churches and stuff like that, they're practicing voodoo. And y'all can get mad at me, but study your history, study your religious history, because most people get their religious history from some big-titted 15-year-old girl in Sunday school. Because you go to Sunday school, and it's a 15, 16-year-old chick teaching you the Bible. The fuck does she know? And then you get up, and then you may become an altar boy or whatever, and then you're getting the shit from the priest or the preacher or whatever. The fuck does he know? He went to seminary school, and 99% of the seminary schools are white schools. These people came way, way after Christianity. And they've designed it with the King James Version of the Bible and all this other new shit. They don't go back to Coptic Christianity. They don't go back to Kemetic Christianity. Exactly, so they can't.
They're doing what they can and what they have.
So that's why I'm telling y'all, before y'all send me any emails and cuss me out and all kinds of shit, study the origins of religion. Read the book, Who is This King of Glory? And also read Africa, Mother of Western Civilization. Also read Civilization and Barbarism. Also read a book, you're going to like this title, Christianity Before Christ by John G. Jackson. And then read Man, God, and Civilization by John G. Jackson. And then call me. Read those before you call me, or you text me, or you cuss me out on YouTube, or whatever the fuck.
You're watching.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rajan. Thank you for such a brief improv.
We got to finish the rest of them, right? Okay.
So we have a bunch of questions to go. We just did one page. There's 80-something questions here, 100 questions. So yeah, just a brief thing so we can get started and get this.
You're not going to get this all in one pile. We're going to chop it up.
Alrighty, have a good one, everybody. Make sure you check out Rajan at Woke Multimedia, RajanLive.com.
All right. And buy the book on Amazon. Yeah, this is good shit. Now, me and Kevin did this already.
You did the whole thing.